Hey everyone, welcome to my video about 007 GoldenEye for the N64. My reason for creating this video is because I have seen some YouTube reviews and over the years, different discussions around this game. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions about GoldenEye and a lot of unfair criticisms or maybe not fully explored aspects of the game. So that's why I'm making this video, to talk about some things that I think a lot of other YouTubers and game reviewers don't understand about GoldenEye. So let's get started. I'll kind of do a little combination of me playing the game and talking about it. So the first thing I definitely want to begin talking about are the screen options and the control options, because there's a lot of confusion or a lot of misconceptions about especially the controls. So let's take a look at the controls. So for people who don't know, there's actually different styles of controls of GoldenEye. The default one that most people play and talk about is 1.1 Honey. This is the one that all of us are very familiar with, where the analog stick kind of turns with left and right but moves with up and down, which is very different from, modern style controls. This is the control style I played most of my life. I actually did get used to it and do enjoy playing it from time to time still. I think it's really good or really fun, but for people who want those modern style controls, there are all these different types. The double controller ones are always really cool. But the one that I think most people should look into is 1.2 Solitaire. This is what most speedrunners use, and it is actually an approximation of how FPSs play on computer, right? Where your C buttons are your arrow keys and your analog stick is your mouse. That's very similar, where you move around with the C buttons and then you aim with the analog stick, just like you would with a mouse and keyboard. And so on modern controllers, this is very similar as well. The only difference is that the sticks are swapped, or they would be swapped, right? Where your movement is with R and your aiming is with the left stick, like on the original controller. However, if you're playing on emulator, which I recommend because I think emulating N64 games is the way to go these days, then all you have to do is just swap the buttons around. So that's what I do, or swap the sticks around. So now I have modern controls. Very simple. It's not that hard. It just takes a few minutes to get set up. You just swap the controller. You just swap the mappings. Very simple. So, and I think on the original controller, it does actually feel surprisingly good. So I think the criticisms of the controls, I think, are very unfounded. Another little fact I wanted to point out for people who don't know is that I'm saying this because recently My Life in Gaming did a video on N64 controllers, and they're talking about the N64 analog stick and how it was the first analog stick and stuff. This is, of course, a very technical little thing I want to point out, but something I think more people probably aren't aware of or should be aware of is that in a technical sense, the analog stick for the N64 controller is not an analog stick at all. It is actually an optical stick. So if you open it up and take a look inside, it doesn't have an analog potentiometer like the DualShock and all modern controllers. Instead, it has this optical reader and a slider and like a wheel. So when you move the stick, it actually turns this wheel that goes through a sensor, and the sensor reads the optical inputs. So the difference is that, if you want to be real technical, is that the N64 analog stick is not analog at all. It is optical. It's actually more of a digital input. And I think that's what gives one reason why the N64 stick has a very particular feel, a very particular movement style. It isn't just because the gates and stuff in it are different and just the build of it's different. It's actually the way it reads inputs is very different from, most analog sticks. So for me, I would say the truest analog stick is actually the PlayStation 2 one, right? That was the first true analog stick, where the N64 was this digital stick. But anyway, so another thing I definitely want to talk about is, you'll notice in this captured footage here, I am playing in 16:9, right? There's no borders, whereas most N64 games are in 4:3. However, this isn't me stretching the game, obnoxiously like you would do. This is actually supported by the game itself. So let me show you. So for some insane reason, like I said, I feel like this game was extremely forward thinking. They decided to add 16:9 full screen resolution support, and you can do wide if you want. So that's what wide looks like. You can do cinema. What does cinema look like? I can't even remember. Let's take a look. Cinema. Oh wow, it's like ultra wide. So one day when you get those when you have your ultra wide monitor, you can play it in ultra wide resolution if you want. But I think it's really cool that it supports this, especially the 16:9 full screen, right? Sorry, the menu's giving me trouble. There we go. So that's another thing I want to talk about is how forward-thinking it was in terms of the screen resolution, all those sorts of things. Other aspects of the game that I feel like should be mentioned is that GoldenEye is an extremely fast-paced game if you want it to be. Bond has got some legs on him, that's for sure, you know. He moves around very fast, which I think is really cool. I love old school shooters because of this. Doom 2016 did a pretty good job of bringing this back, but the old style shooters where you can move around extremely fast. Speed is part of the gameplay. GoldenEye is no different. So yeah, in the completionist review, he said that GoldenEye is a methodical game. It can be if you want it to be. What's really cool about GoldenEye is it's very open-ended, and it's very versatile in the ways you can play it. So if you want, you can actually play it like a stealth game, which I'll show you here in the next level. If you feel like it, there's some stealth mechanics built in the game. Or if you want to play it like a run and gun Doom style game, you can play it like that. It has a lot of different ways it can be approached. Then of course the open-ended level design with the mission-based objectives and everything. I really wish more, you know, games would do this, or do this as well as GoldenEye did. To me, this really is like the Mario 64 of first-person shooters, where it just holds up over time and is a timeless classic. And I think all these criticisms towards its controls and gameplay, I think, are pretty unfounded, to be honest. So here, I'm going to show you that this game has some stealth mechanics built in as well, where if you want to play it like a stealth game, you can. You notice I'm not alerting the other people because I'm using quiet means of killing them. Oh, this guy's always a pain in the butt. You have to kind of go around him. And the funny thing is that because Bond is so fast, you can actually get away with playing stealthily better than you'd think. A trick is if you get up close and personal with the guards, they have trouble hitting you when you're close to them. So that's just a way to approach this. Let's see how far I can get. You also use some like stealth tactics, right, where you move around the screen between their shots and everything. It's actually really fun. I'm gonna get hit here because there's two of them. The fun one is to go into the jail, maybe I'll show that, and start using throwing knives. But yeah, that's just showing off that you can play this game like a stealth game if you so choose. There's also a lot of fun stuff you can do with the game. The game's weapons are all really fun to play with. You can experiment. I remember as a kid, I used to just load this game up and just play with all the different weapons and do all kinds of dumb crap you can do with them. There's a really like arcade-ish vibe to this game that I really wish more FPSs would emulate, right? Where it doesn't feel like you're playing like a Call of Duty game or anything like that. It feels like you're playing more of like a Doom, old school arcade-ish style game, which I really appreciate. And so I think a lot of people who talk about GoldenEye and talk about, well, does it hold up over time? If you're trying to play it like Call of Duty or something like that, no, it won't, because that's not how it's designed. But if you're actually looking for more of like an arcade-ish feel to your first-person shooters, this is definitely the way to go. GoldenEye is one of the best, in my opinion. I play it all the time. It's probably my most played N64 game, even above Star Fox 64, which, as you'll know from the videos on my channel, is one of my favorite games of all time, and definitely one of my favorite N64 games. I'm not sure if I like GoldenEye or Star Fox better. It's really hard to say, but I do play GoldenEye more. So by Mark logic, the game you like better is the game you play the most. I do like it more just through sheer playtime. See, look how quick Bond can get around. And then the different objectives, they just add that nice little touch of replayability as well, where it's not 100% the same every time, but it's not drastically random usually either. Some of the objectives will alter, some of the objectives won't. Now, of course, if you guys are at all familiar with GoldenEye, you're going to be familiar with our White Goose and Carl Jops and their channels, so you'll know all about like GoldenEye speedrunning, which is like extremely interesting and really cool. Again, the reason why I think this game is so speedrunnable is not only because the gameplay itself is really fun and fast, which I think makes a big difference, right? But it's also because it's so open-ended, where it gives speedrunners a lot of creativity, a lot of different things they can do. It's also very replayable because it has 3 different difficulties. You get different times for the different difficulties, and then each difficulty has different objectives. So if you watch like speed lore and stuff like that, based on the objective, sometimes the way the level plays out can be vastly different. So I'm trying to think of some other misconceptions about GoldenEye that come to mind. Oh, of course, the multiplayer versus the single player. So in a lot of reviews that I'll watch, like the completionist one I saw, there seems to be a very large emphasis on GoldenEye's multiplayer over a single player. Many people will say that, you know, the multiplayer is the real reason for the game, the reason why it's so popular. I think even the guy who made the game, one of the developers, talked about the key to its kind of long-standing popularity is the multiplayer. And I actually don't necessarily agree with that. I think the multiplayer is really cool, and I do remember playing a bunch of the multiplayer. But I think if it was just simply the game's multiplayer, Halo defeated it long ago, right? Because I remember when I was really young, people would play GoldenEye at parties and stuff like that for fun, like, you know, in like death matches and stuff. But the thing is once Halo came around, Halo obliterated GoldenEye as far as LAN parties and stuff like that, right? And I think in terms of playing like competitive LAN parties, Halo, as much as I love GoldenEye and as fun as it is, Halo is just better for that for a lot of reasons. One being that it was kind of made for that a little more than GoldenEye was. The hardware is better. There's also like the ability to get more people linked in, and you also can play on different monitors, so you're not cheating off each other's screens like in GoldenEye. So there's a lot of reasons that I think, as cool as GoldenEye's multiplayer is, I don't actually think that's the reason why it is held up as long as it has, or has as big of a fan base as it does. I think it is actually the game's single player that does that, where unequivocally, I think, like when you compare it to Halo and stuff, I think GoldenEye single player is much more engaging and fun, much more replayable. Like I remember playing GoldenEye multiplayer a fair amount with my brothers and stuff like that, and with friends, but not nearly as much as the time I put into single player. And in fact, sometimes when I'd hang out with my brother, we'd prefer to like swap between single player missions. Like he'd play a mission in single player, I'd play a single player mission, rather than just playing multiplayer. And the reason why is just because the single player campaign was so fun and interesting, and it's got hidden levels, and it's just absolutely astounding. So I think people, at least that I've seen, heavily underrate this game's single player content, which I think is very, very good. And I'm pretty sure I just missed the building plans, didn't I? Or the safe key or whatever it was. Just take a look at the objectives here. Yeah, I did. So yeah, the objectives of the game are make it really fun. There are some levels, of course, that even now when I look at them, I'm like, not this level. Surface being kind of one of those levels, but still, for the time, it very, very good stuff. Let's just redo this because I accidentally crossed the objective. Another thing that's really cool is it's really quick, like I showed here, to just reboot levels and stuff like that. I think the levels are this really sweet length where they're not so short to be, you know, kind of uninteresting or shallow, but they're not so long as to be kind of these long, dedicated experiences. Again, a good point of comparison is with Halo. Halo has great single player. I don't think anyone will deny that, and I did play a lot of Halo single player. But whenever I think about playing Halo, like, to beat a level in that game takes a good amount of time, a good amount of commitment, and your brain's kind of like, do I really want to sit and play Halo for 45 minutes or whatever it was to beat a level? Whereas in GoldenEye, you can literally boot it up and beat a level in a few minutes. So it has a real pick up and play factor to it that a lot of other first-person shooters just don't have. Let's get to the correct thing here. Of course, you gotta love the destructibility of this game. Sometimes it can be a little bit detrimental to the actual gameplay. For instance, in Frigate, there's a part where you have to defuse bombs, but sometimes when you're going to defuse a bomb, a guard will just walk in and shoot you and blow up the bomb as you're trying to defuse it, because the consoles explode so easily and stuff like that. But other than little edge case scenarios like that, I think the destructibility of the game is really, really fun and interesting. As far as levels go, I think there are so many great levels in this game, especially the early ones. I think a lot of the early ones are really, really good. My favorites being, probably my very favorite level is Bunker 2, you know, the jail one. That's probably my very favorite. Then my second favorite might be Facility, maybe. The only issue with Facility is that it is a little bit less open-ended than some of the other ones, and it is a little bit empty, I feel like, at times, where it's just not as robust, I think, as something like Bunker 2, but still a very, very, very cool level. And of course, I'm a non-speedrunner, so I think if I was a speedrunner, these opinions would be very different. Another fun trick is to shoot the grenades here. I think that worked. Bunker 1's also really good. The only thing about Bunker 1 is that, you know, it's literally the unfinished version of Bunker 2 with some changes in the objectives and stuff like that. Oh, I forgot to building plans. Whoops. That's okay. So this is just a fresh save file I booted up, but I wanted to show different levels. Silo, of course, one of the best levels in the game. This is the run and gun stage by far. You can tell this level is made to show you, yeah, you can actually run and gun in this game, and here we go. I have a sadistic enjoyment of killing the scientists. When I was a kid, I used to love, like... Oh, another thing I want to talk about before we end the video is the fantastic amount of hit stun this game has. I'll try and show you on an enemy here. But what makes this game, again, really unique from a lot of other, like, first-person shooters, especially modern ones, is this delicious amount of hit stun that enemies take. It's kind of hard to show here. I better use the PP7 to show, but... So when you shoot an enemy in this game, it stuns them. And you can use that stun in different ways. Kind of like in Resident Evil 4, actually. Another reason why, see, like, the hit stun in this game? These enemies are not bullet sponges. Like, they react to getting shot with like a good amount of hit stun. Another reason why I think the game is so fun to play is because of the hit stun, where the enemies feel very alive. I keep killing hostages or scientists. I think that might be the last one I can get away with killing. Just listen to this unload on people. I actually think this game is surprisingly violent for a T-rated N64 game. That's okay with me, but yeah, if they added just a little bit of blood to this game, this shit would be M for sure, because it's pretty violent if you think about it. Oh, move, dude. Okay, here we go. There's the keycard. Just the destructibility is really, really fun. So we'll finish out this level and end the video here. Yeah, those were the main points I wanted to go over though with the game. I feel like the game gets an unfair rap a lot of the times. And I think people should check it out again. It's definitely worth coming back to if you haven't played it in a while. Especially with the, 1.2 control scheme going on and emulating it with nice graphics and everything. Dude survived. Okay. And of course, following it, the speedrunning in this game is very, very interesting. Oh, this guy's gonna wreck me. There are even like peek mechanics like this. I'm not very good at using them, but maybe. So you can peek around corners. There's a lot of shit in this game that a lot of people don't realize you can do. And while the rest of the stage is playing out, let me thank my patrons: Dingo, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Brian Shiver, Dunpill 2064, EC2151, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Gus, Kiwi, Jake Ryan, Joe Angelo, John, Game Boy Guru, Kay, Quentin, Malaise, Mark Sloan, Maz, Meher Kalendrian, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Daggers, Okla Kugels, Parlar, Rysosis, Sarah Thumbs, Scentmore App, Sugumo, Turopan, Young Money Sui, Plasmo, and Utakaya.